I know you guys are not going to like the title of this video. In fact, I'm pretty sure there will be some of you who will come on here and dislike the video immediately without even watching it, and that's fine. But if you give me a chance to explain, hopefully you'll see a little more where I'm coming from. Now, as I'm sure most of you know, later today at 6 p.m. Eastern time to be exact, free agency opens and free agents and teams will be able to start contacting each other and negotiating contracts, officially anyway. So it's very possible that this video will instantly be outdated if we find out in just a few hours that the Bulls have made an offer to, say, Lonzo Ball or another point guard for that matter, which makes this all a moot point, so I'm fully aware of that. Now, of course, the recent reports and rumors that have been circulating around the league is that the Chicago Bulls are the most likely destination for Lonzo Ball. This was heightened when Chris Haynes made a claim that unless there is a hiccup, Lonzo is going to be a Chicago Bull, which I'll actually touch on that in a little bit because I do think that there has been a bit of a hiccup that might disrupt these plans. But even that being said, I do think Lonzo would actually fit well on this roster and fulfill a lot of the Bulls' needs. There's someone else I would just much rather prefer to see in a Bulls uniform in that starting point guard role, and that is Ben Simmons. Yes, I said Ben Simmons. I want him on the Chicago Bulls, and that's what I want to talk about in this video. So what's going on, everyone? You are listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Guys, very quick before I get into the content, as most of you know, if you've been following the channel, I am doing a series of 5 giveaways as a thank you to all of my viewers for getting the channel to 10,000 subscribers. I have done the first 3 giveaways and will still be doing 2 remaining ones. One is for a piece of a signed sports memorabilia, and the other grand prize are tickets to a Bulls game at the United Center this upcoming season. And I've mentioned that each giveaway will be announced randomly on a video every week, and if you've been tuning into this one, then you are in luck because this will be the 4th giveaway in which the winner will be a proud owner of this signed Joakim Noah 11x14 photograph, which is COA certified for authenticity. I was going to be doing a Scottie Pippen piece of memorabilia, but that piece that I was looking at was sold, so we're going to go with Joakim Noah instead. And in order to win this giveaway, all you have to do is predict in the comments who you think will be the Bulls' first signing in free agency this offseason. What player? And the person that guesses that name correctly first in chronological order will be the winner of this giveaway, and you cannot edit your prediction after the fact, so choose wisely. Anyway, best of luck to you guys, and let's get back into the content, shall we? So I want to start by where all this is coming from. Like, why am I even talking about Ben Simmons again? Aren't we past that? Shouldn't we be focusing on snagging Lonzo Ball at this point as our most realistic option? And you guys know that I have been saying for a while now that if the Bulls can buy low for Ben Simmons, that they should do it. His skill sets are perfect for what this Bulls team needs, and to be surrounded by shooters in Lavine and Vucevic. Yes, there are some major flaws with Ben Simmons, and I'll get into those in a second. Now, after my recent interview with my last guest on the channel, Tony Gill of NBC Sports Chicago, he said something very interesting to me that really had crossed my mind before, but I had never really sat back and digested it. And we were talking about Lonzo Ball being a potential target for the Bulls in free agency, and when I asked what his thoughts were on Lonzo and whether or not he could be that starting point guard for the future for this team, his initial response was, Lonzo is nice, but have you asked yourself, is a core of Lavine, Vucevic, and Lonzo Ball over the next 3 to 4 years going to win you a championship, or at least be a title contending team? And I think as Bulls fans, if we're going to be honest with ourselves, I can't say in good conscience that we would be. I've said before, I think Lonzo would be a great addition to the Bulls. He would make this Bulls team better. I think we can all agree that if there was anything lacking on this team or areas for improvement, it would be with their playmaking and their defense, specifically perimeter defense. And Lonzo Ball fits both of those needs, but I don't feel a player like Lonzo makes the Bulls competitive enough to compete with the likes of the Nets, the Bucks, the Sixers, or even the Hawks. And I know some of you are probably thinking, well, hold up, dude. Why are we even talking about being title contenders? Can't we at least just make the playoffs first before we even talk about winning a title? And yes, that's fair. But at the same time, this new front office has repeatedly emphasized that they won't settle for mediocrity. Well, I think Lonzo Ball is a good pickup, but is he an elite player? Is he a level above mediocrity even? Now, I'm sure some of you might think that yes, he is, and that's totally fine. But is he really the best option for the Bulls in terms of what they can get this offseason? Need I remind people that although, yes, Lonzo Ball had one of the best seasons of his young career last season, and I hear a lot of people saying, well, Lonzo has continued to get better year after year, he's a rising star, but if you actually look at his past seasons, that's not entirely correct. Yes, he had finally started becoming more efficient. He was a much more efficient player on offense, and I mean substantially more efficient than he has since his rookie season. But at the same time, his numbers have regressed across the board, not only from his rookie year, but last season as well. In terms of his rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks are all down. Now, you might think, well, that's a product of circumstance. He wasn't being utilized properly last season under Stan Van Gundy, and that's true to an extent, but he averaged over 31 minutes per game, just 1 minute less than his past season, and he still started all games that he played in. Yes, Lonzo greatly improved his shot, which is incredibly impressive, but he's still an inconsistent shooter from game to game. And so if the Bulls paid Lonzo Ball $20 million per year, which is what reports are indicating, and I know some think that that's fair value for Lonzo Ball, which yes it is if you look at how other guards are, getting paid with similar caliber, skill set, and age with today's NBA salary cap, but just because it's fair value doesn't mean that it makes sense for the Bulls to commit $80 million over the next 4 years to Lonzo Ball, locking up that kind of salary towards your cap with Lavine, Vucevic, and Ball taking up the majority of your cap space, even if it is quote-unquote fair value for someone like Lonzo. Is that mediocrity? Also, it's worth noting that it was recently reported by Mark Stein that Miami is slowly emerging as a favorite to land Kyle Lauri in free agency, and that became even more apparent when the Heat exercised their team option for Goran Dragic, which would signal a potential sign and trade for Dragic and Kyle Lauri and potentially some other fillers. Now, if that does mean in fact that Lauri goes to the Miami Heat, well, then the Pelicans would be put in a position where they may need to keep Lonzo and match any offer he receives, since it's been speculated they are going to be aggressive in pursuing Kyle Lauri. But if they strike out on Lauri, well then, Lonzo might be their backup plan, which would mean the Bulls aren't getting Lonzo Ball since, again, he's a restricted free agent. Now, let's talk about Ben Simmons just for a moment, because I can already see in the comments, dude, Ben Simmons, the guy who can't shoot a jump shot to save his life, the guy who couldn't sink a free throw in crunch time, shooting worse than a middle school basketball player, that's the guy you want? Yes, I am talking about that guy. Because look, Simmons, his shooting is flawed. He has a lot of flaws. He is still an elite defender, one of the best defenders in the league, top 3 defender in the league in my opinion. Not only that, but he's also an elite playmaker with his court vision, his ability to run an offense effectively, a player who can feed Vucevic in the paint or on the perimeter, and finding Lavine in the pick and roll or pick and pop. A 3-time All-Star and an All-NBA player, a 2-time first-team All-Defensive Team player, and a steal champion just a season ago. That is going big, taking risk and being aggressive and making this team better and contending now. Yes, I get that Simmons can't shoot. Yes, I get that he's a liability late in games because of his free throw shooting. I'm not as concerned about his lack of shooting, because with shooters like Lavine and Vucevic, it won't be as much of an issue as what was expected of him when he was on the Sixers, where they don't have as many shooters and relied on him more for his scoring. What I am concerned about is his free throw shooting, though, because that is ultimately what makes him the biggest liability in close game situations. It's an easy way for a team to get into his head and get a possession in their favor. Now, if Simmons can just increase his free throw percentage from its current 61% to even just 70%, ideally 75%, that no longer makes him a liability when it comes to the hack of Ben strategy from the opposing team. Because 1 miss out of 4 isn't worth it enough for a team to intentionally foul him to get the ball back. If they can just get his free throw percentage up 10%, that is a game changer, because at the end of the day, I don't think Simmons is ever going to improve his shot. I really don't. He's never going to be that guy. But as long as teams aren't going to have to rely on the hack of bend strategy at the end of games anymore, that is big in terms of his role and what it would be in a new environment, one in which is in need of a playmaker, a team that has strong scorers and shooters, and a team that is in need of perimeter defense, and to not have to rely on his offense as much as his current role in Philly. Now, of course, the biggest downside is, yes, Ben Simmons, his contract. And of course, because he's under contract, you're going to have to trade for him in order to get him, which means unlike signing Lonzo Ball outright without giving up assets to get him, you're going to be giving up pieces to get Ben Simmons and take on a massive contract in which he'll be owed close to $140 million over the next 4 years. That is a huge risk that you take for a guy that may never develop a jump shot. But I personally would rather take that risk of bringing in an all-star and an elite level talent in Ben Simmons than a risk on giving Lonzo Ball a 4-year deal, even if it is 10 to $15 million less per season. You're talking a difference of $10 to $15 million for what I would consider mediocrity, a better team that we would have with Lonzo Ball, a playoff team, but likely not a deep playoff team, versus a title contending team by adding a player like Ben Simmons. Now, most of you are probably thinking, well, we don't have the assets or the pieces to even trade for a guy like Ben Simmons, unless of course you include Zach Lavine, which I've said countless times, the trade isn't worth it at that point. Simmons on the Bulls only makes sense if you have Lavine on the team. And of course, we know the Sixers front office has been proposing ridiculous trade offers for Simmons, completely inflating his value to the league when they literally have such little leverage at this point after making it clear that Simmons will not be returning to the Philadelphia 76ers next season. So here's what I think is going to happen, because a lot of people speculated that Simmons would be traded on draft night after it was clear that the Simmons-Sixers divorce was in high gear. And of course, he wasn't traded on that night. I think because Morey's ego is so huge, thinking that they can get a package of Wiseman, Wiggins, the Warriors' number 7 and 14 pick from this season, and 2 future first, which was what was rumored to be offered, they're going to continue fielding offers and rejecting reasonable offers, like when the Pacers offered them Brogdon and a first-round pick. And this will continue to happen all summer until finally we get to training camp and they still have not been able to find him a trade partner, and then they're forced to accept lowball offers, which is where I hope Arturas Karnisovas will come in, work his magic, screw the Sixers over by offering him a low value package deal and say Coby White, a sign and trade for Lauri Markkanen, Troy Brown Jr., and Thaddeus Young, as long as they don't waive him, since at the time of this recording, there still hasn't been a decision announced about that. And then also along with a Bulls second round pick for next year in 2022, just to sweeten the offer a bit. Yes, I am potentially living in a fantasy, probably, but I like the front office. I don't want my team to settle for mediocrity. I want the Bulls to be relevant again. I want them to be aggressive in competing now, not just competing to make the playoffs. So I want to know what you guys think. What do you think about the potential of bringing in Ben Simmons to the Chicago Bulls team? Does he make more sense for this roster than someone like Lonzo Ball, given all the salary constraints, the contractual negotiations, everything that this team potentially needs? Let me know in the comments, and as always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.